Boy, we are burning the midnight oil tonight. Fact sheet on Executive Order 12333, RAW, Signals Intelligent Availability Procedures. On January 3rd, 2017, the Director of National Intelligence, in coordination with the Secretary of Defense, issued the procedures for the availability or dissemination of raw signals intelligence information by the National Security Agency under Section 2.3 of Executive Order 12333, the raw SIGINT availability procedures. The procedures were approved by the Attorney General on January 3rd, 2017. The procedures are called for by Section 2.3 of EO 12333 as amended in 2008. The last paragraph of Section 2.3 of EO 12333 provides the elements of the intelligence community. Provides that elements of the intelligence community may disseminate information to a recipient intelligence community element to allow that element to determine whether information is relevant to its responsibilities and can be retained by it, except that information derived from signals intelligence may only be disseminated or made available to intelligence community elements in accordance with procedures established by the Director of National Intelligence in coordination with the Secretary of Defense and approved by the Attorney General. Purpose and scope. The purpose of the procedures is to enable intelligence community elements to conduct their national security missions more effectively by providing them with access to unevaluated or unminimized, i.e. raw, signals intelligence SIGINT collected by the NSA, subject to appropriate privacy protections for information about U.S. persons. Now, for those of you that get your panties in a bundle and you go, see, I knew it, they were protecting. No, that doesn't mean what you think it does. It's just another way to sidestep being able to hand off raw data and keep it nice and quiet and still keep it secure. Controlled. Yes. Tried to help you understand this about signals intelligence before, but let's keep reading, okay? This access will enable intelligence community elements to bring their own analytic expertise to reviewing that information and to use that information in support of their own missions. The procedures provide an important mechanism for enhancing information sharing, integration, and collaboration in the intelligence community. In addition, the procedures are consistent with the recommendations of that amazing 9/11 Commission and other reviews of the intelligence community. The procedures do not alter the rules that apply to the NSA's collection, retention, or dissemination of information other than to permit the NSA to disseminate raw SIGINT information that it has already lawfully collected under that same Executive Order 12333 to other authorized intelligence community recipients. Further, the procedures do not alter the legal authorities or civil liberties or privacy protections provided by FISA and Presidential Policy Directive 28, PPD-28, Signals Intelligence Activities. PPD-28 requires IC elements to have procedures for safeguarding the personal information of non-U.S. persons collected from signals intelligence activities. IC elements requesting access to raw SIGINT pursuant to the raw SIGINT availability procedures will need to review and, if necessary, update their PPD-28 procedures to ensure that they account for access to and use of raw SIGINT. Civil liberties and privacy protections in the procedures. The procedures include protections to ensure that the civil liberties and privacies of U.S. persons are protected and that all activities undertaken pursuant to the procedures comply with the Constitution and other applicable law and policy. These protections fall into three broad groups. First, The procedures establish requirement for requesting access to raw SIGINT. Access will be limited to circumstances where the information is expected to further a foreign intelligence or counterintelligence mission in a significant way. Second, the procedures establish rules that a recipient intelligence community element must follow when accessing, processing, or retaining raw SIGINT, as well as rules for disseminating information derived from raw SIGINT. The processing, retention, and dissemination rules closely follow those used by the NSA. Third, the procedures establish training, auditing, oversight, and compliance requirements to ensure the proper handling of United States person information. So this particular dni.gov file, going over your signals intelligence procedures, comes from finding K-factor on the X in relation to what I keep telling all of you when it comes to it gets handed down in its raw signal format. Hey man, if you've got the software and you're working with, for example, the FBI eGuardian program with the U.S. Marshals or not, or whatever intelligence community elements you're working with, there are rules and procedures that they will use in the format of software and hardware, so some CMOS and face and encryption and de-encrypting signals and the other ways that we use encoding to protect access for things like TSSCI and all the other different types of it's secret or it's not, and maybe kind of nipper sort of whatever. But when you're given raw signals from the NSA, well, it's plausibly deniable all day. It's just signals. Nobody can tell what it really says. Okay, so they have procedures for that. Requests for access. An access request must be made by a high-level official at the requesting element. Requests must be in writing and made in consultation with the element's legal counsel and the appropriate senior official responsible for the protection of civil liberties and privacy. Requests must explain how the raw SIGINT is exposed to further in a significant way a particular foreign intelligence or counterintelligence mission or function of the element, and why other sources cannot provide the information that the element expects to obtain from the raw signal's intelligence. Requests must also explain how the element will protect the raw SIGINT and describe how the requesting element's compliance and oversight programs comport with the requirements of the procedures. A high-level NSA official must review and, if appropriate, approve the request based on a determination that the request is reasonable in light of all the circumstances. Prior to the NSA making raw SIGINT available to a requesting element, approval of the request must be memorialized in a memorandum of agreement governing the availability, retention, and use of the information. This agreement must be approved by high-level officials not only at the requesting element and the NSA, but also at the ODNI, acting in coordination with our amazing Department of Defense. Why is it amazing? No comment. Rules for processing, retention, and dissemination. DOMINT! Domestic communications. The NSA SIGINT mission is focused on the collection of foreign communications. Therefore, a recipient intelligence communication element should rarely encounter a domestic communication. A domestic communication is defined by the procedures as a communication where the sender and all intended recipients are located in the United States, and that was acquired under circumstances in which a person has a reasonable expectation of privacy and a warrant would be required for law enforcement purposes. The procedures provide that recipient intelligence community elements may not use a query identifier or other selection term that is intended to select domestic communications. If, despite this limitation, a domestic communication is inadvertently retrieved, the procedures require the recipient intelligence community element to destroy it promptly upon recognition, unless the Attorney General determines that the contents of the communication indicate a threat of death or serious bodily harm to any person. We're here to protect you because we love you. Restrictions on the processing of raw signals intelligence. A recipient element may only access and process raw SIGINT for the authorized foreign intelligence or counterintelligence purposes or counterintelligence purposes documented in the applicable memorandum of agreement. This restriction serves to prohibit recipient elements from querying raw SIGINT for a law enforcement purpose. A recipient element may use a selection term based on the identity of a communicant or the fact that the communications mention a particular person, but the element may only use a selection term associated with a U.S. person or person in the United States if the element's legal and compliance officials confirm that the selection term is associated with a U.S. person who is a current FISA target, or if the selection is approved by the Attorney General, or, in certain limited cases, is approved by the Director of the NSA or the head of the recipient element or a high-level designee. A recipient element may conduct communications metadata analysis to include contact chaining for approved foreign intelligence or counterintelligence purposes without regard to the location or nationality of the communicants. Recipient elements conducting communication metadata analysis under the procedures must report annually to the Attorney General on their activities. Restrictions on the retention of raw SIGINT. The procedures limit recipient elements to a specific time periods for evaluating raw signals intelligence. In no circumstances may a recipient element retain raw SIGINT beyond the time that the NSA may retain it. A recipient element may permanently retain communications to, from, or about United States persons only if they are, number 1, foreign communications, and number 2, the element has processed the communication so as to eliminate any U.S. person information defined by the procedures to be information that is reasonably likely to identify one or more specific United States persons. Or the element has determined that the dissemination of such communications without elimination of reference to such U.S. persons would be permitted under the dissemination provisions of these procedures. Restrictions on the dissemination of raw SIGINT. A recipient element may disseminate U.S. person information derived solely from raw SIGINT only if a high-level official identified in the governing memorandum of agreement determines that the intended recipient has a need for the U.S. person information in the performance of his or her official duties, and one of the following conditions is met. The U.S. person has consented to the dissemination. The U.S. person information is publicly available information. The U.S. person information is necessary to understand the foreign intelligence or counterintelligence information or assess its importance. The information is evidence of a possible commission of a crime and is reported consistent with the intelligence community element's crime reporting obligations. Of note, intelligence community elements may not query or search raw SIGINT for a law enforcement purpose, but they may report evidence of a possible crime that they encounter in the course of conducting authorized foreign intelligence or counterintelligence activities. The dissemination is required by law, treaty, or executive branch policies or agreements. The procedures for the restrict dissemination to foreign governments or government-sponsored international entities. The dissemination must be approved by the director of the NSA or a designee who must determine that it is consistent with applicable international agreements and foreign disclosure policy and directives, including those requiring analysis of potential harm to any individual. Training, auditing, oversight, and compliance. Training. All intelligence community element personnel who have access to raw SIGINT under the procedures must receive training on these procedures. The training will cover the applicable privacy protective measures, such as the rules regarding query terms associated with U.S. persons or with persons in the United States, the requirements for accessing, processing and retaining raw SIGINT, and the requirements for disseminating information derived from raw SIGINT. A recipient element must develop its training program in coordination with the NSA and pursuant to standards developed by the ODNI in consultation with the DoD. Auditing. The procedures have detailed auditing requirements to ensure the intelligence community elements can effectively monitor compliance. Access to raw SIGINT must be monitored, recorded, and audited by supervisory or other appropriate personnel of the recipient element. Recipient elements must monitor and record all queries used by their personnel, and supervisory or other appropriate personnel must audit and review the use of such queries and search terms. The recipient element's compliance program will specify the frequency of these audits, but at a minimum, they must be comparable to the NSA standards. Recipient elements must review retrievals of information or samples of retrievals from raw SIGINT repositories for compliance with the procedures and for relevance to the authorized mission or function for which access has been provided. Oversight and compliance programs and reviews. Each recipient element must establish an oversight and compliance program tailored to its handling of raw SIGINT under these procedures. The ODNI Civil Liberties Protection Officer will review and approve these programs in consultation with the NSA to ensure that the program is comparable to the NSA's program for similar activities. In addition, the procedures require recipient elements in the ODNI, and in the case of the DoD elements, the DoD, to periodically review the adequacy of oversight and compliance. All right, so what is this again? Well, it's our fact sheet with Executive Order 12333, Raw Signals Intelligence Procedures. And the reason that I just read that all out to you is because of all the different discussions that we've had on the channel in regards to the way that you're getting away with handing out this data to set up parallel construction and other things that you darn well know nobody is watching what you do. You guys have been busy under people's skin for 30 years. You record neurons, you send them out to the database. You have a lot of raw signals intelligence, and SIGINT watches on both sides of when it comes in and when it goes out. So what we've got is we have a system with your fusion centers, okay? They're right here. They work with that FBI eGuardian stuff. InfraGard is over here. Your gang stalking people can be hired. They could be old espionage, new, somebody they just pay some money to do various things. That's still going to be watched over by your FBI, your DOJ, your CIA, your DNI, DHS, FEMA, everybody over here that you have with the State Department, etc. When the intelligence community has to investigate itself, which, again, the marshals, the different parts of FEMA, DHS working together, whatever it might be, they're still using the fusion center. That's because of the sensor fusion that we use, not only with the body area networks, but with our metadata. So I would genuinely appreciate it for those of you out there that continue to point fingers at just one place or the other. And yes, this is from Targeted Justice, but this is a really good graph to use because you're all sharing the same data, and then you get to look the other way because it's raw, and then you follow your little procedures, and you can do whatever you want. We're talking about logging in under people's skin for 30 years so far. And you keep telling people that you have no idea what they're talking about. We've got satellites. We have the different ways in the parietal lobe with Teledyne. We have the different literal just straight up body area network bio data. And now we have different companies with drones that are tracking people for things like their car insurance. You're still out there telling people you're using a tower. You might be bouncing signals, but you don't have to. You got low Earth orbit, above Earth orbit, use geospatial, send a drone over their home. These lenses are adjusted for their terrestrial underground connectivity, okay? And you've had those systems running hot for 50 years. So I think it's time to make sure people understand with FEMA and all these emergency alerts, we're not looking for your phone. We're looking for your bone. That's a cyber biological security guarantor. It ain't a maybe. It's the way that the system is designed. Our Cisco control plane with the Cisco DNA, which is your digital network architecture, can find you anywhere. Because as I've hopefully taught enough people now, when they say that you're decentralized, you're easier to find than you've ever been. And the reason for that is the mesh networking that is all around you. Here's an example of the mathematics, Moore's circle math here on the bottom, that we're using with our drone targeting. Here's the drone, region of interest. Here's your little body on the ground. Okay, and for that we have W-band mitigation between bodies and K-hop nearest neighbor. And all of this uses your kill box technology for our region of interest targeting with the drone. Here's your little body down here. And then the box can be called off or activated depending on what they want to do with it. Okay? So all human bodies are tethered to the cloud. We have cyber biological security. And the comments that I have made are directly correlate to your secret squirrel systems, your 4 tiers of hidden law enforcement in the United States, and the fact that we've got a lot of different DevSec cloud ways of getting in and out of bodies, sending data, that we can send data around certain divisions and all sorts of things. The FBI Guardian program is not, NOT, not the end-all be-all. And that's because of types of distributed computing and intelligence in the industrial Internet of Things, which is here for everybody's protection. So that is why I would appreciate if those of you now hopefully listening to Trump in the White House and everything else that's going on, could you please make sure that people understand, especially in the targeted individual community, it is not illegal to be watching you under the skin. Here's Rutgers University in 2010. It is a cyber biosecurity job to maintain the actual quality of service for precision AI healthcare, HIPAA, and electronic health records, like I've been saying for 3 years, just about, that it is not illegal to be under your skin. And that is because a lot of work has went into developing these protocols. The clustered, the cross-layered, the postural, how you're sitting and standing, the quality of service and temperature so we don't overheat you. Cross-layered, going back and forth with interference, or also who you're standing next to. Clustered, who you've been around, and some other things. Okay? And the reason that this is all here is information communication technology. Your Zigbee, your Bluetooth, and all of that in your wireless personal area network with old antiquated technology like near field channel, RFID. And then it goes out from there. It can use short to medium range, turn it into long range, because we're using the Internet of Things enabling technologies, the terahertz to be up close, and the who can it Zigbee now, visible light communication for short range, okay? But then you're on the network, you're on the internet, and before you start screaming and howling, because this is what the targeted individuals were prevented from learning. And it wasn't the fault of our channel, but a lot of other people did not disclose to them the cyber biosecurity that the Department of Homeland Security watches over. Instead, they were told a lot of different things about fake lawfare that were partial to missile defense, so I don't know why that went on, but I'm here to hopefully throw the brakes so that these people who've suffered enough, they can understand that what you're feeling under your skin is very real. It is called bioelectricity, and your body is electrical. And they're using a chunk of your own anatomy to log in and out of you. So depending on who you tangoed with, whether or not they paid a dirty hacker or a dirty cop or a dirty physician or who knows, there's a lot of people that are in on these systems. There's a lot of people that hide these systems for over 30 years now. It's really good money on the side. I think it's one of the reasons they're pushing for the Real ID for everyone, so that they can suss out all these people that have been making money on the side, selling access to your DNA or your W-band for someone to log into you and mess with your mind. Sometimes they're paid, sometimes they're not. That's all there is to it. This is cyber biosecurity infrastructure that we've had since 2009. Okay? I don't know how to be any more helpful than that, because again, a lot of people in the TI community and, just in general, they don't want to deal with this. They want to continue pretending it's the space aliens or the Book of Revelation, etc. And, we can all argue about synthetic biology and engineered biological entities, and then we could argue about all your religious guesses at what they're doing. But I'm warning you, as a believer in Jesus Christ the Nazarene, amen. That's my personal faith, okay? I'm not telling you what to believe in. I'm establishing very clearly what I have faith in, which is God, all right? And I'm warning you, truly, these people have been hiding jobs from you. That is very, very dangerous, because you guys are approaching it as if you're going to sue someone or somebody's going to pop out of the woodwork and let you sue Pfizer. Meanwhile, we have upstream and downstream on the intra-bio nano things, because these metamaterials have been in use since 2011 with Professor Achildes in multiple universities. It is a biological cyber interface for mRNA, DNA, molecular communication, synthetic biology. And so we need to start using the appropriate terminology so that we can have actual communication. Otherwise, because they have been gaslighting about their jobs this entire time, they are not interested in admitting what they do when they go to work. And they don't care what your opinion is, because you're already tethered to the cloud by the opinion of your national security state. So I hope that helps clear some things up for the people out there who heard the word killbox but didn't understand it means electronic or electromagnetic warfare. I hope this clears it up for those of you that were told that the Department of Defense leaves you out. Welcome to the World Health Organization in 2010. Nobody's left out, folks. We live in a biosphere with epigenetics in which all this molecular communication is built off of our own biological situation. That's not only your DNA and the way that it vibrates and the way that your blood is flowing through your vasculature, it also is your respiration, your biotensegrity, and your sweat glands. So the next time somebody tells you that the DoD left you out, I would be very nervous. And I appreciate the different religious sentiment, whether it's shamans or your pastor or whatever, but this is electronic warfare. It's been around for 60 years. You might have heard of it referred to as the military-industrial complex, Lockheed, Northrop Grumman, Rand, all that kind of stuff, okay? And that's because your butt is tethered to the cloud. It's an industry. There's a lot of business here. And while I appreciate you might be pissed off, believe me, I get it. I tried to warn people repeatedly. I'm like, you do realize when humans realize that this is what you did, okay? They're going to be pissed because the first thing they're going to want to do is get out from under you. And unless you turn off your DNA, you're not walking away. Thank you for your time and consideration today. Mark 5:36, amen.